All right. So work on the women's rights stuff on your own. But today, let's do some of these linguistic movements. Okay. So big number, and it's the linguistic movements. In 1951, these are the state borders of India. Okay. So right off the bat, Yash, what do you think about these borders? How awesome are these borders?
Not great.
Why not? You're saying they're not great? There's all sorts of squiggly lines on there, man. What's wrong?
Well, I guess they're colorful and look pretty cool to look at, so I guess they're pretty great.
All right, what's your instinct? Why is this so bad? Yash, what's wrong with these borders, man? You're on mute, dude.
The different groups are all divided up, so.
Yeah, you like this border up here? How's this nice green and orange state up here, right? This is a hot mess, okay? These are the borders in the 1951. It looks like some kind of like gerrymandering nightmare, right? These borders are partially like hundreds of years of tradition, partially. And partially the British who drew these borders, I assume while they were drunk, I guess, right? They just kind of drew these borders and didn't really care. This causes a lot of problems in the beginning of India's history, of independent India's history. And one of the big problems is that these language groups, the smaller language groups, want representation. Okay, so we're going to get chaos in these 4 states. So here, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, these two states, and then Gujarat and Maharashtra, these 2 states. Okay, these 2 and these 2. That those 4 states, and pair them together. Gujarat and Maharashtra goes together, and Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu go together. Okay, so pair those together. But these 4 states are all going to cause a bunch of problems for India. Now, you also need to know the languages. Okay, so in Gujarat, they speak Gujarati. In Maharashtra, they speak Marathi. In Andhra Pradesh, they speak Telugu. And in Tamil Nadu, they speak Tamil. I'll give you a minute to get these written down. Okay, you need to know kind of which 2 go together, where they are in the country, and what the language is. Give me a thumbs up when you have them all and you're ready to go. Okay, Ilha, are you with me? Okay, all right. So these are the modern day borders of the states of India. The modern day borders, these are the old borders, right? And you can see that these modern day borders make a lot more sense. These are better, right? These are much better borders. Well, they don't come for free. So 1956, our problems are going to start in Andhra Pradesh. In 1956, the problem started in Andhra Pradesh. In Andhra Pradesh, the Telugu speakers are upset because the Telugu speakers want their language recognized by the government. They want their language, Telugu, they want their language preserved and recognized by the government. And according to the Indian Constitution, India has 2 official languages. That's it. Right? Rahul, what are the 2 languages? Come on, man. What are you doing? Why is it taking you so long? Ugh, you're killing me. Your mic's not working. That's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. All right, so Rahul says Hindi, and what's the other official language, guys? One of you.
Isn't it just English?
It is English, yes. All right, so according to the Indian Constitution, Hindi and English are the official languages, but all languages are okay, right? Like it doesn't say the other languages are prohibited. But that's not good enough. Andhra Pradesh wants their language to be taught in schools. They want their language to be protected. Now, one of the conflicts here is that Sardar Patel and that conservative wing of the INC, Sardar Patel is trying to make it so that Hindi is the language for all the states, that it's the national language for all states, and he wants all of India to speak Hindi. Right? And he says, yeah, these are other Indian languages, but if we're going to be a modern country, if we're going to be an effective economic modern country, then we need to be unified in language. Right? Drew, what do you think of Sardar Patel's argument?
Well, while he is technically right, it would make things much easier. It's not practical, nor is it ethical to just diminish what I think like 100 other languages across an entire country.
Yeah, yeah. I want us to be clear here, right? And I think Drew kind of picks up on this. Sardar Patel's not a monster, right? Like he's not some kind of like Nazi marching across the country, right? He does have a point. If India was unified in one language, then that one language would be much, much easier, right? If everything was written in one language, every TV station and radio station, if everything was in one language, it would be much easier, right? But the reality is that India is not one language, right? India has like 30 big languages and like, 200 smaller languages or something like that, right? And so the Andhra Pradesh people are worried, the Telugus are worried that their language is going to be taken away from them. So they start to protest. And Poti Sriamalu is the leader of the protest movement. Poti Sriamalu is the leader of the protest movement, okay? The Indian government starts to negotiate with these guys initially, but then things go bad and they start to arrest them all. This is not going to go well because in the 1950s, everyone remembers the British arresting people, right? This is the memory. It was only like 10 years ago that the British were arresting people. And so now they're going to start saying, whoa, hold on. We had London arresting us from far away, and now Delhi is arresting us from far away. They're saying you guys in Delhi are just as bad as the guys in London, that you're both just people from a far away place that are trying to impose yourself upon us. Right? Can we understand this argument a little bit? Right? It may feel like Delhi is the same country, but for these guys, it doesn't feel like Delhi is. It feels like Delhi is quite a ways away. So Poti Sriamalu in jail, he goes on a hunger strike. He does not write a book. I'm sorry. Yeah. He doesn't write a book. Yeah, I know they usually do, but he doesn't. He goes on a hunger strike, and he goes on a hunger strike for 56 days. 56 days without eating. He breaks Gandhi's record. Gandhi only made it 36 days. Poti Sriamalu goes 56 days without eating. Ilha, how do you think you can survive 56 days without eating? What do you got to do?
No clue how you'd be able to survive that long time.
Yeah. You know how you survive that long? You don't. He died. Yeah, he died. He died in his hunger strike. He basically called out Nehru. There's Nehru in the picture. He called out Nehru, and Nehru didn't bluff. He was calling out Nehru's bluff. He thought Nehru was going to give in, but Nehru doesn't give in. And Sriamalu dies. So here's our problem, right? Once Sriamalu dies, it becomes this huge uprising, right? People across Andhra Pradesh are up in arms about this. They're like, oh my God, how did Nehru let him die? Nehru is supposed to be the hero of the movement. Nehru is supposed to be a universalist that works with everybody. Nehru is supposed to be a negotiator. How did Nehru do this, right? And this becomes such a problem that Tamil Nadu starts fighting too. So it spreads from Andhra Pradesh to Tamil Nadu as well. Now, the Tamils are kind of always on the edge of rebellion, right? The Tamils are always kind of on the edge of rebellion. The Tamils are never going to be quite totally on board with everything. The Tamils are always, they have a long reputation of like, you know, um, blowing things up. Tamils kind of had that reputation, kind of like Punjabis, right? And so the Tamils start to blow things up. They start to blow things up, and the riots start breaking out in Tamil Nadu. This becomes such a problem that Nehru, uh, he starts something called the States Reorganization Commission. And the States Reorganization Commission is the government's attempt to redraw the state borders along language lines. It's the government attempt to redraw the state borders so that the state's borders make more sense. Now, Sri Ramalu and his group, they want two things. They want a couple things. The first thing they want is a state that represents them. They want a Telugu state. They want a Tamil state. They want the states that represent them. Okay. The next thing they want is official recognition of their languages. They want their languages taught in schools. Nehru does not give them the second thing. Okay. One of the problems is that Nehru can't organize all the votes, right? If you remember, the INC on paper, it looks like one party, but it really isn't one party, right? It's like half conservatives and half liberals, right? So it's like a 50-50 party. It's just 50-50 one party, right? And so Nehru is trying to negotiate, and he can't negotiate with that conservative half. That conservative half doesn't want this. That conservative half wants Hindi to be the language. They want everyone to speak Hindi. And they actually are okay with the other languages dying off. They want Hindi. Okay, so this solves part of the problem because they're going to redraw the state borders, but it doesn't solve the language problem. Okay, protests die down for a little while, but then they start coming back up again, right? By 1960, they're going to get massive protests across Gujarat and Maharashtra because Gujarat and Maharashtra both want their languages to be taught. So, Michael, what's the language of Gujarat?
Gujarati,
And what's the language of Maharashtra?
Marathi.
Yeah.
Marathi.
Good. So Gujarati and Marathi, right? Now, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu are relatively speaking small states. Like they don't have massive, huge, giant, massive populations, but Gujarat and Maharashtra do, right? Those are two of the most populous states. Those are two of the biggest ones, okay? And they're really, really big. This includes Bombay, the city of Bombay, today Mumbai. All right, so in Mumbai, we're going to get this student organization, the Samyukta Maharashtra Samiti. Samyukta Maharashtra Samiti, that is the student organization. This is a student organization for Maharashtra representation, basically. Okay, it's the name of the organization. And this organization starts to protest, and they start to go on, they go on protest, and they block off all of the roads of Mumbai. They block off the roads of Mumbai, and they block off everything else. Now, Mumbai is a big city. Mumbai is the largest city in India. Okay, blocking off Mumbai is like blocking off New York. Okay, that's what it would be like for the United States. Okay, Mumbai is a big, big city. Mumbai is also the industrial heartland of India, right? And so by shutting down Mumbai, you are shutting down the Indian economy. Like you are really shutting it down. It would be like removing New York from the American economy, right? It would be a real problem for the United States. So the Indian government does what governments do in my class. I think you can predict this by now, right? They open fire on the crowd. The police come to break up the crowd. The crowd doesn't break up, and they open fire on the crowd. Now, if we think about this in context, these students are using a satyagraha, right? They're using what their parents learned, right? Their parents taught them the satyagraha way. Satyagraha is never going to go away. Satyagraha is happening right now, today in Bombay, right? Have you guys seen the farmers protests in India today, right? Where they have like the entire freeway system blocked off, and all these farmers have like literally like built houses on the freeway because they're in protest right now, right? Like, if you want people who can protest, man, Indians can protest. Whew. Yeah, Indians lead the world in protesting. Um, and so these students are doing what they learned. They're doing satyagrahas. And the government of Gandhi, the government of Nehru, the government of Satyagraha is using violence against them. This is kind of this transition in power, right? Once you're in power, you become compelled to use violence to keep your power. At the Flora Fountain, the fountain right here, there's a big demonstration, and 105 of these students are killed. And this is kind of a moment where the Indian government looks at this and says, oh, damn, right? We need to rethink what we're doing here. They're going to pass the Official Languages Act of 1963. In the Official Languages Act of 1963, the Indian government recognizes all Indian languages and makes it that every state can choose what language they want to use in their schools. But, there's a but they also got to teach Hindi. Dhruv, what do you think about that? Dhruv seems to be in approval.
I mean, I don't know if this sounds bad, but I don't personally see anything wrong with it because in airports and train stations and, and all sorts of places across the country, they speak Hindi. And if you're in a foreign state, let's say if you don't know how to speak the language there, most of the time you can get by speaking Hindi because everyone speaks Hindi.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see anything wrong with making them learn Hindi in school, I guess.
Okay. Dhruv, where's your family from? Your family's Tamil, right?
No, my parents are from Andhra Pradesh. We are a Telugu family.
Oh yeah, you guys are Telugu?
Yes.
All right. How about you, Yash? What are you thinking, man? What do you think of this Official Languages Act?
I feel like pretty much the same as Drew. It makes sense because they're agreeing to keep like the old languages intact, but at the same time they're trying to make Hindi like a national language, which has all the benefits that we talked about before. So I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And what language does your family speak?
Marathi.
Marathi. All right. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Raul, what do you think, man? Oh, Raul doesn't have a microphone today. You're killing me, Raul. You're killing me, man. All right. Okay, so let's see what Raul says. Raul says it's chill, right? All right, so he thinks it's legit. All right, well, you guys are all genocidal monsters who want to destroy the cultures of the Gujarati and the Telugu people, and you guys are monsters. That's a slight exaggeration, but that's what the agitation of 1965 is all about. Because the people are upset that they still don't want to be forced to teach Hindi in the schools. They don't want to be forced to teach Hindi in the schools because if you're forcing you to teach Hindi in the schools, then you are eventually going to destroy those old languages, right? Gujarati will disappear if every kid learns Hindi. That's grandma will only be the only one left speaking Telugu. Okay, so the Tamil group is led by this guy, Kumaraswamy Kamaraj. And if you've ever saw a Tamil first name, man, look at that. Whew. right? Tamils are famous for having super, super long names, right? So Kuraswamy Kamaraj is the leader of the Tamil group. And he sits down and he negotiates with Moraji Desai. Moraji Desai is not going to go away. He's going to be with us for a while. So Moraji Desai is a conservative. He's a conservative member of the INC. And he's not going to go away. Conservative member of the INC. And he is, they negotiate. They basically come down to the agreement that all of the states can teach whatever they want in their schools, and they all have to have Hindi, but Hindi is optional, right? So English and Hindi are optional. So what ends up happening is that most of the students in like Maharashtra or Gujarat or Tamil Nadu, right, that they're oftentimes going to learn like 3 languages, oftentimes in the school, where you'll learn Tamil and Hindi and English, right? But more often than not, what ends up happening is you learn something like Tamil and English, right? Because if you're going to learn another language, they want English because English is like global, right? No one in the world speaks Hindi except for Indians, right? And the idea is that most of the Hindi speakers are learning English as a second language as well, right? So depending on how you count it, India is the largest English-speaking country in the world, right? But if you count it as like English as a second language, right? Most Indians speak something else in the home plus English. Most Indians do, right? If you count English as only a primary language, then the United States is the largest English-speaking language in the world. But if you count all the second language speakers in India, then India is number 1. Okay, that's a good idea of our language conflicts, right? Our language conflicts, but we do have one more ethnic conflict brewing. Okay, one more ethnic conflict. In case you thought the Sikhs had gone away, they haven't gone away. All right, we're going to have this idea of Sikh nationalism. So, the Sikh nationalist movement, the organization is called Shiromani Akali Dal. That's the name of the organization. The organization is founded by, by Master Tara Singh. Okay, it's founded by Tara Singh. This is his organization. Pre-independence, this organization was fighting for independence. Okay, so it was allied with the Gandhi's movements. It was allied with the Satyagraha movements. Okay, unfortunately for them, partition was bad for the Sikhs, right? Partition was bad for a lot of people, but the Sikhs were like triple losers in partition, right? They got super, super jacked, right? Like 1/10 of the Sikh population was killed, and like 1/3 of the Sikh population is homeless, right? So the Sikhs got super screwed in partition, and the Sikhs are not very happy about that, right? They feel like they got sold out by the Indians. They feel like they're not really part of India. They feel like the Hindus don't care about them. They feel like they need to be their own country. That movement is called Khalistan movement. They want to make their own country, and they want to call it Khalistan. They want Punjab independence, basically. Punjab independence. And so it's the Khalistan movement. Khalistan means land of, Stan always means land of, right? So Kali in Punjabi means pure. So land of the pure, which is incidentally the same thing that Pakistan means, land of the pure. Yeah, right? So this movement has grown a lot of strength over the time, right? And as India is fighting over its languages, you got to remember Punjabis speak Punjabi, right? They don't speak Hindi, they speak Punjabi, right? And Bengal is still in the same boat too, right? we're used to Punjab and Bengal being our trouble zones, right? But at this point, Bengal and Punjab are both so jacked up by partition. They have so many homeless people, so much poverty. They are just desperately trying to keep themselves from famine, basically, right? And that's why the language movement starts bubbling up in these other places. But the Sikhs aren't going away. The Sikhs are going to be a problem. How much time do we got? What time is it now? I don't have a clock on me. Okay. All right. All right. Let's do some Indira Gandhi. I don't know if we're going to finish Indira Gandhi, but we have to start Indira Gandhi. I'm trying to get everything done so that we can have time to work on your essays. All right, Indira Gandhi. Let's make her her own number. Do any of you guys know anything about Indira Gandhi yet? Yash don't answer questions about India. Yeah. Okay. Drew, you kind of know some stuff.
My parents hate her. That's not that's the most I can give.
Your parents hate her?
I think most Indians do, is what I've heard.
Yeah. She's problematic. We're gonna say she's a problematic figure. Raul, Yash, do your parents hate her too?
I've probably never heard my parents discuss this, I guess.
Oh, I made the mistake of asking Yash about India. He doesn't know anything. All right. Raul doesn't know either. All right. So, okay. So Indira Gandhi, first things first, she's Nehru's daughter. Nehru's daughter. She is not related to Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, no relation. Her last name Gandhi is a married name, but it's not Gandhi's family. It's like 4 or 5 different removals away, right? So it's not Gandhi's family. Okay, so don't get confused there. She's not Gandhi's daughter. She's Nehru's daughter. Okay, she's in the INC. Nehru dies in office. Nehru dies in office in the early 1960s, and they're going to have 2 different prime ministers after Nehru, and they're not good. Like they just kind of suck. They kind of just don't really do much. They're not very important. They kind of suck, right? She rises to prominence, and she rises to prominence in the party, and she's elected in 1968. Now she's elected with this platform, Garibi Hataao. Garibi Hataao. Okay, Drew, do you know what that means? You're shaking your head.
Doesn't it just mean like remove poorness or something?
Yeah, to remove poverty, right? This is her campaign slogan, Garibi Hataao. And she's running on a campaign of eliminating poverty. She wants to destroy poverty. Now, Indira Gandhi is basically a communist. Okay? She's basically a communist. She is so far to the left. She is far left of her father, right? Nehru was already like communist friendly, right? Nehru was like 30% communist. She's more like 60% communist. Okay. And she becomes elected, and one of the first things she does is nationalize the banks. She takes over the banks. When you nationalize it, it means that the government takes them over. And so she takes over all the banks because she says that in order for her to eliminate poverty, she has to control the money. She has to control the money of the government, right? Now, if you know anything about communism, you'll know that the first step in the Soviet playbook of how to take over a country is to take over the banks. Because if you can control the money, then you can control who gets the loans, who gets the businesses, who gets to buy property, who gets to, manipulate anything, right? So she takes over these banks. And then she also abolishes the privy purse. The privy purse, it's probably good that she abolishes this. The privy purse is the special status that princely states have in the government. This means that the princely states are getting like subsidy money from the other states. right? And this is very, very unpopular. This is something that happened when India was negotiating with all these princely states and bringing them into the government. A lot of the princely states negotiated like a payday, basically, where the king and the king's family are basically just paid a section of paid money from the other states. So, like Uttar Pradesh, the largest state in India, right? Uttar Pradesh is the largest state and is thus paying the largest amount of money. Some section of the Uttar Pradesh money is going to pay the ruling family of like Pondicherry or Goa or like Sikkim or something like that, or Kashmir, that they're paying these royal families. And this is profoundly unpopular because the people of Uttar Pradesh are like, what the hell? Why am I paying for some king on the other side of the country? What the hell, right? So she abolishes the privy purse, and this makes her pretty popular. Okay. She runs on this populist platform. She basically travels from state to state and she basically tells all the people what they want to hear. She says, hey, Tamils, do you want to protect the Tamil language? Okay. Hey, Sikhs, do you want to protect your Sikh religion? Okay. Hey, farmers, do you want more subsidies from the government? Okay. Right? And she's running on this platform of universal language, universal culture, universal religion, universal everything, that everyone can benefit from this new system. She also goes to war with Pakistan, and she helps Bangladesh gain its independence. Now, going to war with Pakistan is a good way to make yourself popular in India, right? The Indians are always like, they're always on board when you can really stick it to Pakistan, so that's nice, And so she becomes really popular from beating Pakistan in the war and from ending the privy purse and taking over the finance system, right? People are looking at this. Then comes the election of 1971, where she does a lot of really shady business, right? As it turns out, she's manipulating the polls and she's stealing the election, and that she is not actually winning as much popular vote as she says she's winning. So she gets sued. The Bihar movement rises up against her, and it's being led by this man, J.P. Narayan. And these are the guys who are opposed to Indira Gandhi, right? And they sue her. And as they sue her, she does a really non-democratic thing. What she does is she arrests the judges. She arrests the judges, throws them in jail, and then she says that the judges have abandoned their post and appoints new judges in their place. Welcome to democracy, everybody. Right? That's not exactly how democracy is supposed to work. This causes a huge problem. Now they start calling her Durga in the news. Durga in the news. Do any of you guys know what Durga is? Who that is? Mike and Ilha, I assume you guys don't know, right? Any of my Hindus know? No? All right, so Durga is like the god, she's the goddess of like war and death and like chaos, right? She's like the goddess of war and death. And they start calling her this, that she's Durga. And she hates this, right? She hates being called Durga. Now, she's got a real problem, okay? J.P. Narayan is a socialist. Socialist parties are usually left-wing, right? They're usually in the left. And so the socialists are her allies. This is a real problem because this is an anti-Indira crowd right here, right? They're coming out in massive, massive protests against her. Now, when Desai, right? Remember Desai? When Moraji Desai speaks out against her, it's not a problem because he's conservative, right? She can throw him in jail and it's not a problem because the conservatives already hate her. So she does that. She throws him in jail and it's not a problem. She just arrests him and throws him in jail. And that's okay because it's not okay. but she looks at it as being okay because he's a conservative. He was never on her side anyway. But when Narayan is going against her, that's a problem because he is eating away from her support. He's taking people from the left. So she does what any good autocrat does, and she throws him in jail too. She also gets really upset at the newspapers calling her Durga. And so what she does is she shuts down all of the newspapers. She shuts down the newspapers and she arrests all the reporters and she declares a state of emergency. She basically puts the entire country under military law. I think that's a pretty good place for us to stop because class is almost out. Class is almost out, so it's a good place for us to stop, right? But just, you can leave it here. This is like our cliffhanger, right? Indian democracy is hanging by a thread, right? Indira Gandhi is going to prove to be probably the greatest threat to Indian democracy. Probably. Okay? All right, do you guys have questions? No, we're good? All right. Unless,
I think
yeah.
like you said that the test prompts were up on.
They are. They're one of the discussions. I made the discussion, it's IPT2, like India, Pakistan test 2. If you look in the discussions, it's in there. Drew, did you have a question too?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the Official Languages Act of 1963.
Yeah.
Were we supposed to say that teaching Hindi in school along with the other languages is wrong, or like?
Well, they certainly think it's wrong, right? The people of Tamil and the people of Andhra Pradesh certainly think it's wrong, right? But Yash and Dhruv and Rahul all seem to think it's a good idea. So you can follow wherever you want on that, right? It just depends on if you're going to agree more with Sardar Patel or if you're going to agree more with, if you're going to agree more with the student groups of Tamil, right? I think this is something where a lot of Indians disagree. Yeah. Yash, did you find it?
No, I don't think it's. Maybe you didn't publish it yet. I'm not sure.
Well, the class today found it.
Okay.
Let me look real quick. Let me double check. I'm looking at it right now. It's published. Here, let me put it in the module. Maybe you can see it more easily if I put it in the module. I think I forgot to put it in the module.
And then for the Women in Indian Democracy assignment, is that like the Satyagraha assignments where like we can work together on parts of it?
Yeah, you can, but I want you to turn in your own work, right? But if you guys wanted to split it up and share with each other and then just, rewrite it in your own words, then yeah, absolutely you can work together. Absolutely you can. All right, I moved the discussion into the module. You should be able to see it in there. Okay, and the discussion is just called test prompts IPT2. You good? Give me a thumbs up if you found it. All right, good. Raul asked, are we going to go over the test prompts in a future class? And the answer is yes, I want to. I want to go over it with you guys on Thursday, which is why I'm trying to push through this stuff, right? I would like to go over them. So yes, I hope so. Cool. Are we good? All right. If you guys don't have any other questions, you're free to go. I'll talk to you later.